I watched Des. I watched all 3 parts back to back this morning, which was quite a way to wake up. I just wondering in regards to that, just what it was that sort of attracted you to that particular project, and how happy you were that you sort of got to take part in it, because it's a great little 3 part series.
Yeah, I mean, from Kilburn, if you're of a certain vintage, of Dennis Nilsen, who started killing in Willesden, just up the road from where I lived at the time, and where I went to school. So we used to always stop at the murder house on Melrose Avenue, as kids did, that sort of macabre attitude of young boys. So I already had some interest in it. And yeah, it was just one of those ones where I'd worked with the director on another shoot, I think with Sheridan Smith, a year or two before, and it was a relatively small role. So he just called me up, and he said, "I know you can do this. Do you want to have a look at it?" So I was like, obviously flattered, because I always have to audition. So do you know what I mean? This was like a chance to do something where I didn't have to go through the horrendous job interview that I have to go through for everything else. So that was, it was a no-brainer, really. Plus the role was so interesting. It wasn't, normally I get cast colorblind, I'll just play a part that could have been played by a white guy, Asian guy, whatever, or even a woman sometimes, it's just a stock character. Whereas this, is very specific in terms of the dude I was playing is a real guy, Brian Lodge, the mixed race copper who led the evidence room, led the digs, logged all the bones, worked out how many bodies there were. He's someone I was able to spend a lot of time with. So like that opportunity to play someone real and to meet that person and get the stories and his voice and demeanor firsthand was pretty unique. I think anybody in my position would have snapped at it, and gone for it. So I was no different, really.
Yeah. It's very interesting. You say, like, I worry I've got to sort of go through too many emails. He had to log bones. I mean, like, it's a crazy the things he had to do, that guy.
Yeah, I mean, this was in the days pre and all that kind of technological advancement that came in the early 90s. So it really was a tough job. Like, he would be at the digs and, uniformed guys would just like plod through the crime scenes and stuff. It'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake. Do you know what I mean? Like I haven't even tended that ground yet. And he was literally like at times just like putting like a boiled head or like a foot in the boot of his car and driving it to morgue. It's in his little MG across London. Just so mad.
Yeah, but it's interesting because obviously, but I've mentioned before, I grew up in Kilburn as well, so I was just really close to you. And we used to do the same. We heard of the place on Melrose Avenue, and we used to kind of go up and kind of see it. And it just got me thinking, because part of what is interesting about Des, and as in the 3-part series, is that it is studying our kind of macabre fascination with serial killers and stuff. I just wondered, what do you think it is about that just appeals to us? I love a kind of serial killer documentary, and there's something about
it's weird. I think there are definitely people who love it too much. The guys who get the true crime magazines and are trying to fight for these additional facts and conspiracy theories about serial killers. Then on the other side, people who want to marry serial killers and like we're pen pals with them. You could take it too far. But 100%, I think everybody has like a strange interest. And I think it is because it's the most extreme behavior of a human being towards another human being. So if you look at the other end of the scale of extreme behavior, you'd have someone like Larry David, So I think we all love Curb Your Enthusiasm because it's a human being behaving to other human beings in a way that we're constantly trying to repress, right? We all want to just call someone a dick. Do you know what I mean? Or just spill out all our thoughts and truths. But we don't because of, our social status and our understanding of polite society. So you've got like Larry David on the bottom rung of like extreme behavior, and then it goes all the way up, I think, towards the ultimate, which is just taking another human being's life. Like it's absolutely brutal and impossible to understand. And you know, like, I mean, I had roast dinner on Sunday, and from the recipe I was making, it was saying like with the like cut in under the skin or under the flesh and put in like cloves of garlic and rub doing it. I was like, oh, it's actually really grim. Do you know what I mean? I felt much closer to the idea of this dead animal, you know, and I was slightly put off by it. So, you know, I think there's just that question of how on earth, like how could you, what state of mind would you have to be in to be able to take another human being's life? And as horrific as that thought is, it's also endlessly fascinating, because it makes you wonder about human nature. Like, why aren't we all murderers? You know, like the human race in its infancy, the modern Homo sapien, we were all constantly battling to survive, and you might have to kill another human. You know, I mean, all the other types of of humans that there were at that time before Homo sapiens basically took over. There was loads of different types of humans, but we wiped them all out. We didn't wipe them out by, you know, like with kindness and writing them letters and saying, please leave us alone. We killed them all, you know? So there's obviously something in us that is brutal and murderous, but it's just over time, we've just sort of got rid of it out of our system. And I think there's something about murder similar to fire, which is like weirdly magnetic. I think it must be prehistoric. So now for someone to be a murderer, they have to be unhinged. They have to be crazy. But that's too simple a description of a murderer, because the thing that we all want to avoid, so when you see in the papers evil, vile, monster, nightmare, all these kind of words about murderers, the one thing they never use is human. Like, these guys are humans just like us, and that's the really terrifying, fascinating thing, I think, with someone like Nilsen.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, I mean, I couldn't be capable of killing someone, because I'm not even capable of being on the Larry David end of the scale. I couldn't even cut in front of someone in a queue. If someone cuts in front of me in the queue, I just let them stand there.
There you go. That's the vast majority of us, myself included.
And there's, I mean, as well, I mean, you always have to look at kind of like Line of Duty and just kind of going back to like great TV in this country of like Prime Suspect and stuff like that. We just do these kind of 3-part mini-series, these crime dramas so well. And I'm just wondering, having been on the set of one, is there a kind of swagger when you're on the set? Did you get a sense that everyone feels? Because we are just really good over here at making and churning out these really brilliant kind of Sunday night dramas. I just wondered if you get a sense of the kind of the confidence on set, that everyone knows that we're kind of, is everyone kind of in their groove in some regards?
No, not at all. I would say that's definitely true of like a returnable series, though. So when you come back and the first season was a hit, I think there definitely is that kind of swagger. We know where we're at. I mean, one of my first big jobs was on Law and Order, and I arrived in, I think, series 8. And it was just a well-oiled machine. Everybody knew what they were doing. Everybody knew who was into the show. You know, something like this, it's a complete unknown. So you're trying to create a world, you're trying to create a tone, and you're trying to create a look. And it's a leap of faith. We're all like hoping that the writer, the director, the producer, and the DOP know exactly what kind of look and feel and tone they're going for. And we'll go with them. But it's an absolutely, you've got to have some confidence, but without any feedback, without any previous track record of that story being on television, no, you're never sure.
Yeah, and one thing that does help, I'm sure, with the kind of confidence on set is when you've got the cast that this has got. I mean, what Danny in particular, I'm a big fan of Danny Mays, and I've interviewed him before, and he was such a great, charming guy. I mean, what he must be thrilled to have the opportunity to work with people like that, because they must just raise the game of everyone around them.
Yeah, I mean, it's threefold, right? Because Jason Watkins and David Tennant as well. You know, these three to me are heavyweights. So I was super excited about working with all three of them. You know, I just seen Jason in Chernobyl, which is some of the best TV I think I've ever seen in my life. So I was very excited to work with him. David Tennant, of course, is a superstar. But I was probably most excited to work with Danny because I've been such a fan of his for so long, since Shifty, which I think, I mean, when was that? 98 or something?
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago, I think. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But I loved that film. And, you know, I don't think there's many voices like Danny's in our world, in the UK, you know, in the acting world. So he's somebody who should be celebrated. And yeah, I was super looking forward to meeting him and working with him. And yeah, he was in, I mean, all of my scenes really. So I got to spend a lot of time with him, and he is, like you say, he's just a top bloke. And without him, I don't think the shoot would have been as fun. It still would have been good, but it wouldn't have been as fun because he's just constantly having a laugh, like all the time. He's an unbelievable dancer. You know that?
Really?
Really good. So like every now and again, he'd just break into like some Michael Jackson. He can like moonwalk and do the spins and all the moves and everything. He's really good, like surprisingly good and live.
Yeah, well, thanks to you. Next time I interview him, I'm gonna have to ask him to do a moonwalk now.
He can dance. He can really dance. So like sometimes he just be dancing, and other times he just be taking the piss, making jokes and chatting to everybody. He was just, he was a great person to have on the team.
Yeah, I interviewed him about a year ago, and I tried to get a few questions in, but all he wanted to talk about was anything but the film he just made. And we were just chatting. I think football came up a lot, and because, you know, so he is, and the streets and things like that. And he's just, he's you could just tell he's a good person to have around on set.
He is very much so, yeah.
I was obviously talking about hanging around with people a lot. You've obviously collaborated a few times with Ricky Gervais. So just wondering, not just as a comedian and as an actor, but just as a kind of someone, as an entertainer in this industry, what did you learn and what did you take from your time spent with Ricky, who, talking about kind of like superstars, I mean, he's about as big as it gets. He's kind of been around the block, and he's hosted the Golden Globes. I mean, what did you kind of learn from your time working so closely with Ricky?
Well, one thing I learned from him was about ownership and drive. I always had a lot of drive, and I always was willing to work hard. But Ricky obviously took it to a whole other level. And he is very much like an auteur, you know, a writer, director, comedian, actor, musician. Like he does it all. So there were various little echoes that I saw in what he was doing that I could develop on, you know, because I was doing a lot of different things when I met him, and I'm still doing a lot of different things now. And how to manage those, micromanage them, and make them work, and utilize your time correctly. That was a big thing for me. The other thing was like how late he got into show business, how much maturity he had by the time he started making a name for himself, and how much real life experience he had behind him. I had exactly the same. You know, I got into this business at 29. I already had a life. I had kids. You know, I had a lot going on in my normal life. You know, so learning how to deal with the business as a grown man was also very, very useful. He just doesn't compromise on anything. And I think I'm probably more open to I definitely am more open to compromise than him. But you know, learning how to value your own worth was possibly the biggest lesson he gave me. Also, he just kept challenging me. He just kept challenging me in a way that nobody else did. So he, you know, when we met, he was like open for me in Norway. So I did that. It was a huge challenge. Succeeded. Then he was like, come and be in this show, Derek. You know, help me develop the scenes that you're in. Like, I want you to take leadership on what your character and does, you know, of a huge challenge without really knowing if there's no guarantee I was going to do well at those things or not. And then, but he gave me the opportunity, and same with the movie. He was just like, just be as involved as you can be from start to finish, with the music, with the script, the ideas, the story, the characters, name even, you know, like get involved. So he sort of puts these little challenges in front of you, and then it's kind of up to you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because you obviously mentioned that you came into it quite late, but have you always been like an entertainer? Even like just, I know that sounds like a big word. I don't mean like you were like doing sort of stand up for your family when you were 8 years old, but I just mean, have you always been interested in performing ever since you were quite young?
Well, I mean, two things with that question. People always, when they interview me, like reel off this list of things that I supposedly am, and I always think of myself as just an entertainer. That is the one word that I do like to describe myself best, because it's what I always wanted to do. And the second thing from that question is, I was doing stand up in front of my family at 8 years old. Me and my sister would always do that. We would learn bits from TV, from sitcoms, mainly from stuff like Monty Python, Two Ronnies, Porridge, anything that had like, Smith and Jones, Mel Smith and Griffiths Jones, Baddiel and Newman, anything that had like sort of two-hander funny things in it, we'd learn them and then perform them, you know. So that was always on the table. And as far back as I can remember, I wanted to act, you know. I wanted to be an actor when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and was always trying to get in the school plays and stuff, and continued to do that all the way into my teens. But then, you know, teenage boy in London, the background that I was from, you just sort of stop believing. You just think, well, you know, it's nice, but that's not the real world, you know. You're not just going to be an actor, so forget about that. And that's what I did. I sort of forgot about it. About 20, I just gave up on it. It came around nearly later is remarkable, really, but I'm very grateful. And I there's lots of things I regret, but I don't know if I'd changed the way that happened, because I ended up having 10 years as an adult living a real life, rather than, you know, going to RADA, getting my first role at 18 and just living a life in show business, not knowing anything outside of that. I don't think I'll change that.
Yeah, because I was wondering, so you mentioned obviously doing sort of performances with your sister and stuff. I mean, she's brilliant. You must be so proud of her and everything she's kind of achieved, because she's remarkable. I mean, obviously, as from Kilburn as well, she's like one of us. The whole of Kilburn feels so proud of her, and you. Yeah,
she's a hero of the area. There's no question about it, you know. And she feeds off of the energy of the people in the area, and has written about the area extensively. She's immortalized it, put it on the map, really, because this corner of London is not one that gets talked about a lot. You know, South London gets talked about for better or for worse. East London is constantly talked about in so many different ways, you know, whether it's music or other forms of culture and media, fashion, trends. North London is North London. You know, North London was probably the daddy of like character in this city. West London gets its props, got the carnival, it's got Nottingham, you know, it was the original sort of like the posh side of London, you know, Chelsea and all of that. The Northwest London, I mean, what is it? Do you know what I mean? No one ever knows where it is. When you speak to people, they're like, where's that? You know, and you have to say, well, you know, like Camden, like Swiss Cottage. Or imagine if you just kept going northwest from there. They're like, oh, right, okay, yeah, sure. Have you got a tube station there? Yes, we've got a fucking tube station. So yeah, you know, she put it on the map with White Teeth, and it's an incredible source of pride. No two ways about it. And she alongside Gervais definitely like helped me think, who can tell me that it's not possible? Anything's possible. You know, you put your mind to it, you really work at it. You know, talent is not enough. You can't just have talent and sit around. You've got to sort of have just gotta have a real work ethic that you really, really keep pushing. Can't just rest up. There's too many people who want the same thing as you.
Do you remember when it felt like if this was now your career and this was now your profession, you were now an entertainer by trade? Because I guess it's one of those careers, because I've got a couple of friends who are like stand-up comedians, and they perform and they perform and they perform, but if someone says what do they do, I think there's still a reluctance to say a comedian, because they might not be paying the rent off it. It's quite a hard thing. I just wondered if do you remember that moment or that job where you just thought, hang on a minute, this is what I do now. This is
yeah, I do. Yeah, I do, because I was always rapping. I never stopped rapping, but I never called myself a rapper really, because like you say, I didn't make a living off of it. I did it at nighttime, the rest of the time I was doing my youth work. But February 2008, I got on stage for the first time and did stand up. And as soon as I realized how hard it was, like I went into a couple of competitions, So You Think You're Funny and a couple of others. And I got to the final of So You Think You're Funny. So like the last 8 from however many hundreds of people enter that. I was like, this needs my full attention. I just need to go for it. And it was really difficult decision because, I had a young child and my wife was pregnant with the second one. So it was a huge risk, but I never felt more certain about anything in my life, I don't think, than that I could do that job and do it really well in a really different way to everybody else. I just felt so confident about it. And sure enough, like within about 7 to 9 months of standing on a stage for the first time ever, having never even thought of doing stand-up before in my life, I was making a living. So yeah, it was that year there, February 2008 to the end of that year, I was just like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. It's real. I'm getting paid. It's happening. And yeah, I mean, I just flew through stand-up at such a pace. It was crazy.
Yeah. Were you aware that what you were doing was unique and quite different? Because I mean, I remember when I sort of first watched your material and watched it, I remember thinking, I don't think I've seen anything quite like this before. And I just wondered if you were kind of consciously aware that what you were bringing to the industry was quite unique to you.
Not at first, because when I first started doing stand-up, I hadn't watched any stand-up. Like I say, I was always just into sitcoms, I didn't watch stand-up. So I had no point of reference. So that's kind of a good start in itself, because stand-ups have a rhythm, they have a way of speaking. You'll see it. You watch like a younger stand-up or a newer stand-up, and they sort of have this tone and this cadence that they speak with, where you can feel the construction. Do you know what I mean? They remind you of something. What do they remind you of? They remind you of stand-ups, in the way that they're talking. And I never had that, not because I was so smart, like, oh, I'm going to do this different thing, but because I hadn't watched any of them. So I didn't sound like any of them anyway. And that was refreshing to begin with, I think, for people. Secondly, like with the rap and the rap not being parody, not being a piss take, but actually just being me rapping as a rapper, and the rap being funny because it's funny, not because it's funny that I'm doing it, if you see what I mean. Because I'm such a terrible rapper, which is how most musical comedy is, it's just so shit that it's funny. That as well was not like some genius decision by me. That was just like, well, this is my party trick. Like, this is what I can do. So I might as well do that. Someone asks you to get up and entertain people, you're going to do the thing that you're best at doing. But soon enough, when I started getting booked as a headliner pretty early on, and I could see the way the crowds were reacting, the element of surprise, the way they just light up, I knew I had something then. And 2009, I was just like on the warpath. I was doing like 11, 12, 13, 14 gigs a week sometimes, doubling, tripling up. Any city I went to, I just find another gig, do it, like stacking cash, It was crazy. And I just felt, I got to that point where I felt bulletproof, man. I really did. because I just thought, who's fucking with me? Like no one can do what I do. And it's interesting because as it got captured on film for like Russell Howard or Live at the Apollo and whatnot, the tide did start to change, and you started to see, I'm not saying I'm the godfather of it at all. There's plenty of people before me who've done interesting things with musical talent, like Flight of the Conchords and stuff like that. But definitely in this country, I think you started to see people became more comfortable with that idea of like, it's not straight parody, it's like there's music in it, but it's funny because the performance is funny and it's clever, it's thought out, you know, like Shaq or People Just Do Nothing. These kind of things, they started occurring, you know, after I sort of became a household name for what I did.
Yeah, but you're right about the surprise. I think when I first saw you, you just anticipate the rap being really bad because that's what we're used to with musical comedy. We're used to the punchline being this person can't do it, or all the lines have to be kind of jokey. But it was just really good music as well, which I think is one of the things that so many people took from it.
Yeah, there was no way I was going to get up and not be any good, because I couldn't do that to the sort of rap alumni that I'd graduated with from music. I still take rap completely seriously, funnily enough, and I take funny rap completely seriously as well, if you see what I mean. So obviously I enjoy both, but yeah, the one thing it will never be is whack, you know. And I just I owe it too much. Like rap is the sort of, it's the cradle of everything I do. It's the thing that gave me the confidence to have a go at writing jokes, to have a go at writing television scripts, to have a go at writing books, to have a go at acting. You know, it was really rap that gave me that confidence, because I knew I could road test my thoughts in front of people and just not let it get to me too much, you know. Like the beauty of rap is you just do your thing, whether you're good or bad is irrelevant. Like you get up and do it, and you're bullshit about it, you know, and people have to pay attention, and that is a transferable skill in show business.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because you mentioned obviously you felt kind of bulletproof. Was it quite hard to not lose sight of who you are and where you've come from, everything like that? Because it must, when you're getting headlined and you're being kind of like you're topping the bill, and like you said, you're making loads of money from it, and you're kind of touring. Did you ever have to kind of take a step back and just kind of take a breather? Because I guess it might be hard sometimes to not change as a result of that. But you seem to always remain very grounded.
Well, you know, I'm lucky with my wife and my friends, and you know, I've not really made a lot of new friends through show business. All my people are all the same people from before, so that's very useful. And yeah, taking a step back, I did. I had to take a step back a couple of years ago because the lifestyle just didn't suit me anymore. Like once I started getting really big with it, it was like there's just no rest. You just live out of a suitcase and you just keep traveling, and you're just always on your own. And I found that just a miserable existence. So yeah, I had to step back. Plus, you know, the acting was starting to improve. You know, like the jobs were starting to improve and come more regularly, and it was just too hard to be doing like a 9 to 5, so to speak, on a film set, and then, you know, go to Newcastle and perform. You know, it was just it was killing me. So something had to give, and it was stand up. Not that I won't ever return. I'd love to return, but it had to stop in order for me to get some sanity and some perspective, and, you know, to be a good friend again, and a husband and a father, and all the other things that I am as a man, you know. Because if you live out a suitcase like a lot of entertainers do, life can pass you by, you know.
Yeah, but because you mentioned, obviously the last year has been this year has been obviously crazy with lockdown and what's going on in the world. And I was thinking recently, one of the things I've just missed the most is just being in a kind of crowd, be it on I'm a season ticket holder at Spurs, so be it on the terraces, be it at the Roundhouse watching a musical act, or be it anywhere. I just miss that kind of communal feeling. I just wonder, as a performer, how much you miss that at the moment? Because you've obviously got it from a different perspective. You're obviously looking out at a crowd, but how much are you and looking forward to the return of being able to perform again, be it musically, be it comedically, or on stage, or whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, it's a funny one, because I'd sort of made my peace with not doing live stuff, you know. So by the time the lockdown hit, I hadn't been on a stage for a year and a half anyway. So my life didn't change at all. I was just carried on writing and doing voice work. But obviously, as it's gone on, what I really miss is going to gigs, man. I miss live music. I don't have a desperation to get on the stage myself, but I do definitely have a desperation to go and see a band and you know, go to a festival. And you know, one of the tragedies outside of the obvious one of people losing their lives, one of the tragedies outside of that in this era is the hammer blow to culture, you know, theaters, cinemas, music venues, comedy, festivals, get-togethers, parties, you know, the things that make us feel alive, the things that make sort of separate us from animals have been cruelly and all of a sudden TV has become the premier form of entertainment, I'd say. What else is there? So I'm glad I got Des in the can before this went, because I was on a shoot at the time and I'm still not back up and running.
Because we were obviously, I've looked over what you've sort of done across your career, and I've just gathered you're really kind of a big film fan. You're kind of obviously like you're a bit of a sort of cinephile. I was just wondering, just looking as a big film fan, what sort of stuff have you been watching in lockdown? Have you been revisiting any old classics or seen anything new that you've really loved?
No, I think I haven't watched that many movies actually. I tend to get hooked on documentaries and watching a lot of docs. I just finished the Fear City doc on Netflix about New York in the 70s, which is fantastic. The Last Dance, Michael Jordan documentary, again, brilliant. Been watching Tottenham Hotspur, All or Nothing, which is really good, man. A lot of people have been cussing it. I'm like, no, it's great. I love it. And I just started the Rupert Murdoch one on the BBC last night, which is, if you like Succession, it's real life. It's the real life Succession. It's superb. But yeah, I haven't really watched many movies. I've watched, I'll tell you what I did watch during lockdown. I watched all the Avengers films with my kids, which I'd never done before. I'd only seen a couple of them, you know. I wasn't that into them. But I'm a total convert now. Now that I've seen them, they're great. And I watched Tenet on Sunday.
Did you understand Tenet?
To a point, and then I was a bit like, okay, but hold on. If that's the rule that you've made, then how come this is happening? And it really starts to mess with you in an annoying way. Do you know what I mean? Rather than I have to come back and watch this again and really analyze it. I think it's one of those films where they do the don't worry about it. In fact, they actually say it. They go, don't think about it, just feel it, which is the best advice. It's the same in Looper. There's a moment in Looper with Bruce Willis and your man with the double-barreled surname. What's his face? I can't remember. The one who plays the young Bruce Willis. That's another time travel thing. Thank you very much. And Willis is chatting to Gordon Levitt. And Gordon Levitt's like, but wait, that makes no sense. Hold on a second. They're in his cafe. And Willis just goes, don't ask any questions. No point. There's literally no point in asking. We just got to crack on with this. And he might as well have been saying it to the audience. Yeah. Don't think about it too much. You can't think about time travel too much. So, you know, I very much enjoyed it. But it, just like any time travel film or comedy or TV show, it just can't be done without huge gaping plot holes. So it's best not to overanalyze. The important thing was it was brilliantly made, really good fun. I was never bored, you know.
Yeah, I think Chris Nolan is either more intelligent than all of us, or he's just taking a piss out of all of us, and I can't decide which one it is, to be honest.
Oh, it's both.
Yeah,
it's both. Because no matter what kind of film he makes films. And you or I are not intelligent enough to make films. Like, it's really hard to write and direct a film. Like, even a shit film. It's really hard to do that, to get it all the way to completion. It takes a very powerful mind to do what he does. So he is more intelligent than us. But he is also taking the piss because, you know, a lot of Tenet just doesn't work. But it's fine because it's a movie. You know, it's not a science talk. It's a movie. So anything can happen in a movie. So it's fine. Movie's no different from a cartoon. Anything can happen. You know, when Wile E. Coyote falls off the cliff, in the next frame, he's fine and he's got a new plan to catch the what's he called? The Roadrunner, you know? He's got a new plan and he's fine. And you're like, he just fell off a cliff. It's a cartoon. A movie is make-believe, just like a cartoon. You know, we get hung up on the like if you get hung up on like with Tenet, like, but wait a minute, if you've gone back in time or you're going forward in time, like that, why would you can't? That's like saying, watching a zombie movie and going, yeah, but wait a minute, how come he's eating a foot-long hot dog in this scene? Where it's like, it's a zombie movie. Zombies don't exist. That's the question you should be asking. Why is there zombies? Like, why is there time travel? Time travel doesn't exist.
Yeah, everyone got caught up on, was it sort of, so you could see a Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones. You're like, you're worried about that. There's a dragon that just flew over the side.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, as soon as you buy a ticket to see a film, you've got to suspend your disbelief, you know, and if you don't do that, then you're kind of a misery guts. Like, you're kind of the person that I just don't want to talk to about movies, because you're going to get caught up on the things that are not romantic. The amazing things about Tenet outweigh, I think, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. You know, it's a thrilling, like, kind of roller coaster ride, and that's what you want from movies.
Yeah. So my very final question, because I've actually got just under 2 minutes left before this call just ends.
No
just what's next? Have you got anything in the pipeline that you're quite looking forward to doing?
Well, it's really exciting that I'm back shooting again, as I didn't know when that was going to be. But I am shooting right now, not this very second, but I'll be back on set tomorrow on a movie, which is super exciting. And I've got another 2 TV projects that start. Actually, no, 2 that start in November. One that I was doing before the lockdown is going back up, and the other rejoining the cast of Britannia, which I was on. I was in the second series, so that's going again in November. That's great. And then I'm on to a big series and a new series next year in February. I mean, obviously, all of this is as long as we don't get absolutely fucked by COVID. Yeah. So I'm loath to talk too much about how well my career's going, but it's right this second. It's going great.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, well, that's good to hear. Well, best of luck, Bev. So I would have spent a bit longer on that last question, but it's about to cut out. But thank you so much for chatting to me today, and it's been a real pleasure.
No
and best of luck with all your different ventures. You're doing Kilburn proud.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey You Guys.